I'm sorry, what? Warner Brothers is actively sabotaging the Looney Tunes now? This is easily the wildest, weirdest business move I've ever seen in the animation industry. Thank you, David Zaslav. This is beyond petty and so anti-art. Yes, over the same weekend as the new Looney Tunes movie is coming out, Warner Brothers and HBO Max just tore off their entire archive of Looney Tunes cartoons. And because they really hate children, they've officially kicked out Sesame Street as well while they're at it, as well as several Cartoon Network series. We are now in a world, I can't even fathom this, where Adult Swim is actively valued more than its former big brother Cartoon Network. For the longest time, we've known that the current Warner Brothers regime does not care for kids' cartoons or animation of any kind, their legacy characters, or anything that's not reality TV, according to David Zaslav. Lest we forget the whole Coyote versus ACME debacle, a movie that was completely finished and then shelved for a tax write-off. Despite insiders saying it was a really solid project, apparently the studio deemed that it wouldn't make its $70 million budget back. Meanwhile, Mickey 17 is out here losing the studio a boatload because they spent over $100 million on it. You can guarantee that Coyote vs. Acme would have made more, and that's not to say swap them over either. I'm just pointing out that the logic with pulling it doesn't at all add up compared to what they have released. It's almost like there's a different agenda going on here. However, this is easily the most egregious business move yet. Actively sabotaging a movie that you couldn't be bothered to release yourself? A smaller studio takes on a project with your characters because you didn't know what to do with it, and you do them like this? That's as cold as you can get, and it's so against the very ethos of the medium. I feel so bad for the guys at Ketchup Studios who saved the day the Earth blew up from obscurity. Judging by its currently underwhelming performance, I'm sadly also skeptical we'll actually get that other movie that they were thinking about with Bugs Bunny. And just imagine the outrage if someone like Disney did something like this to Mickey and the gang. Just outright wiping out all of those old cartoons off of Disney Plus, removing Mickey Mouse from Disneyland itself. You can't do that. These characters are intrinsically tied into the legacy and identity of your brand. But apparently Warner Brothers have just progressively ripped Bugs Bunny out of their own identity. Soulless is literally the goal. I mean, to be fair, I wrote off the company when they invited back Ezra Miller to the premiere of The Flash. I think that just tells you everything about the ethics behind this company. There was a time when Bugs Bunny had actively lent against the logo on all of their family movies. Not anymore! I mean, bloody hell, Disney just announced an Oswald the Lucky Rabbit movie from Jon Favreau. And if you know Oswald's history, you see the irony in him now getting a full-on movie at the same time Bugs Bunny is now getting buried in the same way he was 100 years ago. We are now in a time where Oswald the Lucky Rabbit is getting all the love, whilst Bugs Bunny is dead. Chungus and all. This is also just months after Max Brazil released a trailer with Bugs explaining to other cartoons how great Max is going to be, sending the guy out to tell the Brazilian people to buy their streaming service, only to absolutely shunt him. Apparently, this decision was to prioritize adult and family programming for the service. They do know that families include children, right? In fact, a lot of kids will be introduced to those older cartoons through their parents introducing it to them. We've managed all these generations to pass on these timeless cartoons since the 1940s, and now you are actively hacking that legacy to pieces. You are the roadblock. They also said, due to this, programs like the Looney Tunes and Sesame Street, considered children's programming, are no longer a priority due to low viewership. It really is just about the financial bottom line when it comes to Warner Brothers now, isn't it? They're just actively cutting stuff for children out? Okay. You have these two historical icons in Looney Tunes and Sesame Street, and you're just cutting them out of your short-term goals. Is there absolutely no value to them in preserving these two legacy properties? They've managed to simultaneously disrespect Chuck Jones and Jim Henson in one fell swoop. That's not a great place to be! Hey there, they can make it into the halfway mark of this video. I'll give you a brief pause from me shouting my head off. Come subscribe since you're halfway through. And now let's get back to the second half of shouting about Looney Tunes, shall we? That's where life has led me. And of course, you can expect there are several layers of misjudgment going on here. Here's a couple I could just come up with from the top of my head. I bet it's 1, writing Looney Tunes off as just children's programming, 2, writing off children's programming and its value in general, and essentially cutting yourselves out of this market. And then, just to add salt into the wound, the current Looney Tunes project currently out, they have completely disassociated with. I haven't seen The Day the Earth Blew Up. It's not released yet in the UK. I hope we get it soon and I'll see it then. However, I'm curious to know if the fanfare with the Warner Brothers logo turns up at the start, because whilst it's tradition, it would feel outright disingenuous at this point. And I'm now wondering if we're looking at a reality where the future of Looney Tunes would actually be better off away from Warner Brothers. Are we seriously at a point where the better timeline for these characters is one where Warner Brothers is not even involved anymore? It's kind of unthinkable. You know, when you think of Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck, they are Warner Brothers characters. However, when they're labeled as no longer a priority and deleting their entire historical archive off your service, maybe it's time to give them to someone else. I mean, it's happened before. Tom and Jerry, for the longest time, were MGM's main cartoon characters. However, their ownership changed in the 1980s to Warner Brothers. So, let's hope, eh? Will they actually get moved to another studio? Maybe not total ownership, but I can see a licensing kind of situation like with Ketchup Studios happening. My immediate thought is another streamer like Amazon or Netflix, which would basically guarantee no further theatrical releases of Looney Tune films, but to be honest, that's kind of where we're at anyway. I'd certainly prefer that to them being completely shelved forever. Like, at least have that archive available somewhere, for God's sake. I know I love to dig on Disney making too many sequels and too many remakes. They massively overproduce and milk their own history, but at least they're not f***ing burning it. Maybe I was too harsh on Disney. I didn't think it could get any more morally bankrupt. And I'm sure Warner Brothers will still keep rolling out the special editions for collectors and whatnot, squeezing that last little semblance of moolah out of people who actually care about it. However, the sad reality is that the new generation now just won't discover Looney Tunes like that. In today's world, you need a streamer to get those cartoons to that new audience, and without that platform, there may well come a day where the knowledge of this legacy will be gone. And it's the company that built themselves on the shoulders of these characters that are responsible for that downfall, actively stabbing the people that laddered them up to this point, fictional or non. In the coming year even, we may be looking at a world where Cartoon Network is all but gone and no one's walking down Sesame Street anymore. At least with that, they have a shot with another studio picking them up. I hate to say it, maybe Disney's coming for Sesame Street. Get Kermit the Frog on there for old time's sake, I guess. Not that Disney's necessarily a shining example of managing the Muppets legacy correctly, but at least they've never forgotten that it was all started with a mouse, unlike the studio who've gone out shooting for rabbit season. I hope there's a happy ending here, but this is easily one of the worst possible points I've ever seen an animation studio run with. Is it even an animation studio? It's just Warner Brothers. It's just a leaking water tower. During times like this, I guess all I can really say is, if you do have available in your area The Day the Earth Blew Up, maybe go out and support it. Clearly they could do with a little bit of help, since their own father has rejected them now. Looney Tunes is on a real bad footing, and I can't believe a studio is removing their legacy characters. This is... I've heard at least that movie, even if it is created by a third-party studio that they actively want to sabotage over the same weekend for some seriously stupid reason, I've heard that film is super solid. And I'll certainly be seeing it once I can. I guess there's no chance for a sequel to Looney Tunes Back in Action, a Space Jam 3, or hell, actually having access to an original Bugs Bunny cartoon for the next 15 years. And I thought it couldn't get any worse than Coyote vs. ACME. Anyway, on that note, I'm unfortunately gonna have to end it off there. My name's been Daz. Do tell me your thoughts on this Warner Brothers problem. Is there any way of saving this thing from grace? Is the company just a complete tax write-off in total? Tell me your thoughts and more, and I shall see you all in a little bit.